And I will be talking now about assessing and giving feedback in surgery. The objectives of this presentation are that by the end of it, you should be able to describe what a rubric is, explain the importance of a surgical rubric, explain how you use a rubric for assessing surgery, be able to access several surgical rubrics that we will point you to in one of our slides, and finally be able to assess your residents using the rubrics. So my first question now is regarding assessing surgery performed by trainees. Which of these three answers better represent your reality? Let me look for a question. Okay, I've launched the question. Answers have started coming in. Okay, let me end the poll and share the results. So we have a draw here between those who are not sure what a rubric is and they know about rubrics for checking skills, but they do not use them. And one answer says, I use a rubric to assess it. So this is good because then this means that what we're talking about can be useful for you, and we hope that sometime from now, all of you will be using these rubrics to assess your residents. Now this other question, how frequently do you assess your residents at surgery? I want to stop sharing and put it the next question. So there is the box. Answers are coming in. Okay, I'm going to share the results. Okay, so the most chosen answer was after every surgery, but then we have other options also. They choose once every month, once every 3 months. And I really didn't make the difference between formative assessments and summative assessments. Probably most of us do the formative assessments much more often than the summative ones. But ideally, we should be able to do this formative assessment after every surgery, and we'll talk more about that in a moment. So let's review what a surgical rubric is. This already was explained by Nina, but I think that maybe this is the first contact for many of you with rubrics, so I think it's worthwhile repeating some things. So shortly, a rubric is a scoring tool that clearly lays out the expectations for an assignment. What are the components of a rubric? Well, one are the performance elements. Usually in surgical rubrics, these elements, the ones we are going to judge, test, and give a note to them, are the different steps of the surgery. Then we have the category scale. The category scale are boxes where after you watch your resident, you will have to say, okay, he is here. He's performed this as a novice, as a beginner, as an advanced beginner. And the last part of it are the descriptors. This is probably the most difficult part of the rubric to develop because these descriptors have to be very clear and understandable. And what you put in there should be enough to be able to put that resident in that box and not in another. Why are surgical rubrics important? Why should we use rubrics? Please answer through the Q&A. Why do you think we should be using rubrics and not just giving our impression on how the resident performs? Let me see if we have any answer coming in. No one yet. Okay, so let me then suggest some reason. Oh, here one came in. Okay, one says, in order to standardize ophthalmic education. Yes, this is one way of standardizing this. This would be standardizing an assessment. So all assessors assess the resident in the same way. Thank you. So rubric provides consistency through a common lens. What does this mean? This means that if all of you and myself watch a resident perform, we will be assessing him in the same way. The rubric will help us to that. It guides instruction because if you have a rubric, you have to make sure that you teach your residents to perform in the way it appears in the rubric. It also sets expectations because rubrics are a tool that teachers will use, but have to be given to the residents so they completely understand and realize how will they be assessed. And this is important to do because we cannot expect someone to do exactly what we want unless we tell them exactly what we expect. So for teachers, as I said before, this is a prompt criterion reference assessment. So they have criteria to judge what the resident is doing, and all should be using the same criteria. It will help them provide students with detailed and timely feedback. If you do not have a rubric and you have been present with the residents, you can give feedback also, but probably you may forget some point or some step to give feedback on, and the rubric helps you to keep track of that. It also facilitates communicating with others involved in scoring. If all of us are looking at the same rubric and all of us are looking at the same descriptors, then probably all of us will be doing the same, obtaining the same results with one resident. It also helps to help your residents refine their skills. As I said before, for students, it clearly clarifies what is expected from them. The descriptors are informative descriptions of the expected performance. And it helps to monitor and critique the work. Of course, advantages of analytic rubrics are to provide useful feedback on areas of strength and weakness among residents. And maybe one disadvantage of it is that if the rubric is not well done, if the descriptors are not clear enough, then the instrument loses value. And this is why many times, as Gabby told you, we prepare a rubric, we set it up, we use it, and we have our peers review that and get feedback from them. And then, if necessary, we modify it to make it become a better instrument. So how do we use the rubrics? At the beginning, the first time you decide to use a rubric and you sit and it looks like something enormous, daunting, a lot of text put in there. Oh, I will not be able to do this. This will take a lot of time. Reading all this every time will be very time consuming. But really, that's not the case, because even though it can look daunting when you start using it, as soon as you start practicing, this becomes very, very easy and fluent. What I usually suggest is that you always start, you saw your resident doing the capsulorhexis. So then the first thing you do is you look at the word scenario, that he's a novice. You read that and you ask yourself, does this describe how he behaved? If the answer is yes, okay, that's your score. If the answer is no, then you go to the other side, the competent one, and you ask yourself, did this resident perform in this way? If the answer is no, then you're left only two choices down there, and you have to decide which of them better describes what your resident said. So now let's put this to a test. So what I'm showing here are the descriptors that will help us assess this resident performing this capsulorhexis. This is a video. I will show you the video, and you, looking at this, will have to decide how will you mark your resident. So let us watch the video. First of all, maybe you will want to read this or just watch the video. Remember the details on this video and then look at which of all these four options better match this. So let me start with this video. Just a moment. There we go. Before jumping to conclusions, let's watch this complete capsulorhexis. It takes time and patience to watch a new resident performing. But even new residents vary in how they perform. So this exercise will help you decide how did this resident perform. As he finishes, I will put on the question so you can answer. Okay, So let me put on the answer box, and please choose your option. Okay, let me share the results. Okay, so the most chosen options were a beginner and an advanced beginner. And what 2% said competent. Okay, let's review this. The first thing I want to point out that usually when I put on this, many answer novice. They decide to choose novice because they see some shaking of the forceps. They see the resident is going slowly. And that is okay, that's reality. But shaking is not in the rubric. Speed is not in the rubric. So then we do not have to use these criteria to put our resident in one of these categories. So let us review. So nobody answered no, and that is good, because he's not chasing, he is in control of the rexes, and there is no cortex disruption. So this one, let me see if I can put my pointer. Yeah. So this it's okay not to be chosen. Let's see the beginner. Well, this had no audio, so minimal instruction, we cannot take this into account. It says predominantly in control with occasional loss of control of rexes. Cortex disruption may occur. Okay, so clearly cortex disruption did not appear there, and he is mostly in control. I would say he was in control all the time, but there was a moment where the rexis was going too close to the iris border, but he was able to bring it in and bring it back. Let's look at the advanced beginner. In control, yes, he was in control. Few awkward repositioning movements, correct. No cortex disruption. So my belief is that advanced beginner, as 4 of you chose, would be the correct element to choose. So this shows you how, even using a rubric, there can be disparity between those those using the rubrics. And I'll come back in a moment to explain how can we diminish these differences between assets. So regarding the rubrics, you will find them here in the Ophthalmology Foundation website. I suggest you take a picture of this. If you're using your computer, just take a picture, do not scan it. And if you're using your phones, try to capture the screen, because if you now go to the rubrics, you will be distracted. And if you miss to do this, and write to us, and we will send you the appropriate login to this. But in this area, you will find all the rubrics here, and when you click on them, they will open as a PDF, and then you will be able to download the PDF. We've spoken about surgical rubrics. Surgical rubrics are very difficult to build. They take a lot of time. And sometimes you may want to have some kind of instrument to assess other performances of your residents. So one thing that's much easier to to develop, if you do not have time to develop a rubric or you do not find a rubric that will assess this, are direct observation checklists. I said before, we cannot expect someone to do exactly what we want unless we tell him or her exactly what we expect. So, how should we tell? Well, for this, we need to do several steps. One, define the competence. Then define the objectives that will show the competence has been obtained. Then describe the process to attain the objective. And then use a rubric, in this case a checklist, to control the previous process. So let us take a look at an example. So if we wanted to assess the competence of the capsulorhexis and we did not know about the existence of the rubrics on it, a faster way would be to do a checklist. So we first have to define the objectives. And this would be something like this. When he finishes, the capsulorhexis is round, it's 5.5 millimeters wide and centered. Then we have to describe the process for the resident to be able to perform in this way. So one way of doing this would be start. This is the way, one of the ways. There are different ways to perform a capsulorhexis, and you can use whatever you want. But I chose this one. So start at the right of the right reference, a little below it. Puncture the capsule and move towards hour 6. And then to the left to create the flap. Then grab the flap not too near to its insertion. Draw the path you want your rhexis to follow with the tip of your forceps. And then, once you've done this, building the checklist is very easy because you just have to turn into questions the description you made. So in this case, your checklist would be, did the resident start at the right of the right reflex? Did she puncture the capsule and move towards hour 6? Did she grab the flap not too near to its insertion? Did she draw the paths he or she wanted the rhexis to follow? So as you can see, building a checklist is much easier than developing a rubric. So at the end of the surgery, I'm sorry, this is in Spanish, but it doesn't matter. This is the checklist we had developed at one time. We just register for each question if the answer was yes or no, and we can make comments on the side. We comment on the side because many times things are not black and white, and we comment on this. We had this was printed, and at the end of the surgery, we filled it in, and we had a part where we could draw some of, to explain better what happened and what feedback we're giving. And we always had a place where we registered the good performance, what they did well, and the improvement opportunities we could find. So this is just another instrument that you can build if you need it for assessing things that usually, or you cannot find the rubrics that were developed for that. It's important to add these sketches because this helps the resident review this after and for the next surgery. So always use rubrics or other instrument to grade the surgery. Give the rubrics in advance to the residents. And this is the point I wanted to really point out strongly, so that all the teachers that will be assessing your residents are looking at this in the same way. And the best way to do this when you're going to start with a rubric is to get, in this case, for example, get several capsulorhexis. You sit in your room with the rest of the professors. Everybody looks at the video, and then everybody uses the rubric to assess. And when you finish, you look how much concordance there was between this. And if everybody chose the same option, perfect. But if not, then as a group, you analyze what happened, as I did with the example. And this will narrow the discrepancy between assessors. And find the examples of the formal validation. If you do not find them, just write to us. So summarizing, a rubric is a scoring tool that sets expectations for an assignment. It has the performance elements on the left side of it, usually the steps of the surgery. It has a category scale where you have to choose which box corresponds to the resident you are assessing at that step, and it has the scripts. Why use them? Because they clearly set expectations for your residents and for your professors assessing this. And it allows you to give a very good structured feedback. Reviewing what we heard the last time, always give an explanation of your feedback. It's not enough to say, oh, that was a good job, or no, this capsule rhexis was a disaster. Do not give just a number or a finger. You have to explain why it was a good performance and why or was it. Be specific and targeted. For example, you say you missed examining the lens before the surgery, and not say any second-year resident knows that. Or you could do better. That's not good enough feedback. It's making feedback personal. It's not being objective. So try not to avoid this. That's something we always do or did sometime in our career. Be non-judgmental, not evaluative. Or for example, if the groove wasn't deep enough, you say that the groove you did was not deep enough, and not that was a horrible groove you made. It must be timely. So that's why ideally we should do this immediately. When a professor teaches music or a coach is coaching a team, they are there, and once the performer performs, they give the feedback immediately and makes the necessary corrections. Ideally, all surgeries should be recorded. Why? Because at the end of the surgery, it will allow you to point out the feedback you're giving much better, and you will build a collection of videos with some problems that you can use later, either to train using the rubric or for lectures you can give to residents to help them avoid mistakes. So do it immediately after surgery, not during surgery. It's not good for you to be speaking in a loud voice while the resident is performing. It makes the patient nervous, and it makes the resident nervous. Record the surgery and review that immediately after surgery if possible, because if not, if you do it 2 or 3 days later, probably you will forget how the resident performed. Document all this, give it back to the resident, and have them review these feedback you give before they see the next, you go to the next surgery. Always try to balance negative with positive. Start with positive, like we recommend in the feedback sandwich. You start giving the positive, and pleased with your performance at the operating room because that rhexis ended as we want, round, 5.5, and centered. You can give then not the negative, I would say the opportunities for improvement. So you need to improve the explanations to your patients, and you can do this by using simpler words to explain they do not understand some of the terms we're using. And finish with a positive reinforcement. I'm sure you will be able to achieve all these goals. You're getting better and better until now. So make it explanatory, make it specific and targeted, non-judgmental, timely and frequent, and balanced.